what's up, everyone? This is your girl Dre with
Renee, how is everybody?
How's everyone doing? So, we're going to take a brief pause and we'll get right back into it.
Hey family, it's Renee. Are you guys looking to learn firearm safety or do you want to just get in shape with you and 9 of your friends? If so, make sure you get it from bodybuyotactical.com. Let him and his team get you into fighting shape. Not only is it affordable, he comes to you. Again, that is bodybuyotactical.com.
All right, so we're back, y'all. Like, I think we're on episode 13. I can't keep track of what's going on. Like, we really doing the doggone thing out here in the streets, in the us streets. So, Nay, what is today's topic?
Today's topic, it's actually a little different from what we're used to, but it's going to tie in, okay? We're going to do a film review on this movie called Farewell, Uncle Tom. Some people call it Goodbye, Uncle Tom, but we're going to be doing a comparison of what they talked about in that movie because this movie is an actual depiction of what happened during chattel slavery, and we're going to compare that how that worked during the plantation days also to how that's working right now.
Right. So we're gonna get into it. So this movie, Goodbye Uncle Tom, Farewell Uncle Tom, it really wasn't shown in the United States until like 10 years later.
Hmm.
So Italians had actually, filmed this movie in 1971, and it's based on true events, as Nate said. So it's just pretty much, showing a graphic. So let's talk about graphic, right? Very graphic, explicit view on chattel slavery. Pretty much, our ancestors being, brutally, abused and brought from, Africa, the continent of Africa, to the United States. And so if you guys gonna watch it, it's free on Netflix. I mean, it's free on YouTube, excuse me.
Hmm.
And just brace yourself because I was very curled up in a ball. But it's a reality check that this is what happened to our ancestors, especially if you are ADOS, or if you're, you consider yourself foundational Black American. And the film was actually shot in Haiti,
Hmm.
and pretty much they use like Haitian extras just to depict the cruel treatment of the slaves and also the white actors, which was like, oh my god, this is just too real in the film. So that's
Yeah.
my piece on just if you guys want to see it, go check it out.
Right. Something that really stood out to me, like I wasn't even, I want to say 15 minutes into the movie. It's shot like a documentary style. Like people are just going around doing interviews and they're just telling about their daily life, about how they run their plantations. And first, like maybe 10, 15 minutes, you're going to see a group of white people and they're sitting at this table and they're discussing black people as they do today.
Mhm.
And it was one white man, okay? I can't remember his name, guys. I'm sorry. But this is a quote. I believe in freedom, not equality. And doesn't that sound like white allies today or liberal whites?
Right. And then you see how they switch equality to equity, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a new buzzword that goes on. Equity is supposed to be, we all supposed to be quote unquote equal. We're supposed to be on the same playing field, but we know that's not true because they have 400 years ahead of time before us. And the
Right.
picture is going to really take you, through that. And it's really eye opening because that part when you said that, they haven't, I call it the cocktail hour. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what you see now, happy hour, right? They all get together and they talk about this unfortunate, Negro that they helped on their job, or if they work at a nonprofit agency, they're talking about, oh, we help these poor, unfortunate, underserved, because let's put the word out there, underserved Negroes, mind you, while they're working in our community and they don't want to hire folks from the community to handle the issues. So that's what it reminded me of, when they were sitting around the table having cocktail hour and laughing about, oh,
The black fight.
the black fight. Yes.
And there's another white man. He made this statement. He said, this is a quote from the movie, God is white, and as long as God is white, we shall rule over the other races. And he repeated that 3 times. And that was very significant because he was driving home that force. Like, this is what they believe. Like, this is their pathology. And you got to understand that as a black person, this same spirit and pathology that was 100 years ago is still here today.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then
Exactly.
the white woman, she chimed in, but she was a northern white woman, and she expressed great confliction, and I'm doing my air quotes, to the state of black people in the South. And here's the thing that got me.
Mhm.
She said that she wanted to write a story about it, and she thought she was gonna, and she knew what she was gonna call it, Uncle Tom's Cabin. And I'm like, really?
Mm.
Did you catch that?
Yes, I did peep that. I did peep that. But it's always what you said about knowing the language, right?
Right.
And let's take it here too with when you said a good point, northern white woman. Me being from up north, me being a East Coast girl, I know all about the northern white women and white folks. And coming from a predominantly, white city, Boston, that's all you see. And people feel like, well, racism doesn't exist up north because we can have, we could be at the table with white folk and have these discussions, but you're on the menu. And,
Mm.
a lot of times when we are at the table, we don't realize that we're on the menu. And we feel, well, these are some good old white folk because they done helped us, with the Underground Railroad, they're abolitionists. What is it? Frederick Douglass married a white abolitionist. So we all good in the hood, and, these places are liberal. But when we talk about liberalism, it's for white people. It's not for
Exactly.
black folks. And we have to get out that term and have to be like, well, I'm liberal too. A lot of us are not because we're on the menu. And a
Right.
lot of us are pretty much being bamboozled because it's going back to the stages of racism. When the laws and the rules and regulations are against you, how liberal are you? You're not.
Right, and let's talk about that liberal white person for a second. The liberal white person usually comes from a family that's well-to-do or a wealthy family already, so they can afford to just go be the black sheep of the family because
Mhm.
they have the financial backing to support their lifestyle.
Right.
And if they run out of money, grandpa's just going to cut them another check, you know?
Exactly. And that's what you see now with the largest wealth transfer. If you guys read the article, I can't think of who wrote this article, but it was recently in the last few months, is happening. 75, I want to say is $1 million, a billion, are being transferred into accounts of, let's say, your classmate, you went to a PWI, you went to this private institution, and you're wondering why I don't have a house or why I don't have this, because I call it old slave money. The old slave money is being transferred into these accounts. And while we're over here slaving away, right? We're working two, three jobs. We're like, oh my God, we're comparing our lives to white folk, not knowing that grandma, grandpa is using that old slave money that's been transferred to them. Now it's being transferred to the grandchildren. Just have to throw that out there.
Right. And, after they had the white people talking about, sitting around talking about the plight of the nigger, they went directly to being on the slave ship. Now, they were doing this in a very covert fashion because after, a certain point in time, white Americans from bringing slaves over from Africa, but a lot of people were doing it illegally, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were doing a lot of like backdoor trading. And what happened in the film, they showed how they were purchasing these Negro people from Africa, these enslaved African people. Excuse me. They were purchasing them by the pound.
Mm.
I was just like, that's how you buy beef.
Right.
That's how
Right.
you buy grapes. You purchase them by the pound.
By the pound. And don't forget what they put them through. They want to see
Right.
their teeth. They want to see, they're pretty much doing a whole body check to see how healthy they are. Now, let's parallel this to $40 million slave
Do it.
athletes.
Do it.
So, when me and Nate, we're big sports folks. So when you see these combines, it's to me always be looking at it like jump nigga, run fast nigga, It reminds me of being on a slave plantation, and that's going to put the price tag on, okay, your next, black quarterback is going to be the highest paid. Let's say Russell Wilson, because he's the highest paid in the NFL, because,
Right.
he's keeping himself healthy, like he's pretty much, you see him even more now, what a coincidence. He's, indulging in self-care. He's like investing 6 7 figures into his body, which LeBron James, he invests 7 million, like at least like 7 figures on his body. So you got to keep that body in shape. You got to keep it preserved, because guess what? You got to go on the plantation, aka the field, the court, and you have to perform.
Yep.
And whether the white supremacist is being allowed in these arenas, as we have seen with Russell Westbrook, going back and forth with a white supremacist, they don't care. You got to perform under tremendous amount of stress, because you are the 40+ million dollar slave. And a lot of us don't understand like the parallels of, like, my God, that's like on a slave plantation, and here we are looking at the combine. And you're like, why are they making them jump like that? Why are they making them run like that? Because it's pretty much a extension of what you will see in this film.
Exactly. And let's talk about, like, after they got the people to America. Now the film was shot in Haiti, but it was set to be in like South Louisiana, so like the New Orleans greater area, that place.
Hmm.
And they would quarantine them to get the quote unquote the African fleas off of them, and
Mm.
they made them take a bath in this water that was a mixture of like water, ashes, sand, and lye soap.
Mm.
Now let's talk about this lye soap on the plantation. Okay, let's sidetrack for a minute.
Hmm.
Um, lye Back in the day, like during chattel slavery, you couldn't go to Walmart and get 8 bars of zest. Everything was handmade on the plantation. And how do you make soap? You need lye. So what a punishment was. The slave masters, for slaves who transgressed any rules, or they just felt like it, they would make them stick their heads in buckets of lye soap as punishment, because that burns your hair. That's a perm, basically.
Right.
And so that's where perming black hair comes from, because black people started noticing, oh well, that makes your hair straight. And with black people becoming broken down, getting mixed and stuff like that, a lot of the house slaves that could pass would put the lye in their hair to make it straighter, so that they could move safely while running away from a plantation.
Hmm. Right. And that's so cruel. Like, that's very cruel. And if you all ever had a perm, and if you leave it in your hair too long, you get all type of sores.
Hmm.
Even if you all go do your Googles, they're even connecting fibroids to relaxers, which I
Exactly.
believe it, because our body, our skin is the largest organ, right?
Right.
Anything that we put on our skin is going to absorb, and all type of, different absorb, excuse me, and all type of organs. And then we're like, okay, why do I have fibroids at this age, or versus my mother and them's era? Because we put in lye and onto our scalp, and who knows what type of damage we're doing internally, right? So,
Right.
Nay made a good point about, just that cruel punishment of lye. Like she said, you can't go to Walmart and be like, oh, let me get this like charcoal body wash. There's no such thing.
Right, and that was a mark of shame, because back then we wanted to be ourselves. And so if you had to stick your head in a bucket of lye, you were looked at as being, that was shame, that was punishment. You were doing something that you weren't supposed to do. And now look at us. We sit up here, we line up just to get a perm in our head.
Right, exactly. Another thing I wanted to mention too, which I thought was interesting, it was I think it was like in the first 15 minutes, when the white woman went to church with them, and she said, "Oh, I gave them this church so they can worship."
Yes.
I was like clutching my pearls on that point, because I said, and she was in there like overseeing them. You saw that part, right? She was
Yeah.
there overseeing. She was really, hyper vigilant on, what was going on. And, they was pretty much, performing,
Yeah.
because, as black folks, we have that rhythmic, attitude. We're like, hey, we getting this, church rocking. And not knowing that our ancestors was pretty much under a spell. to become Christians or to adopt, certain type of religion. And, they have the slave Bible. And, I'm pretty sure that she probably taught them how to read from this particular Bible.
Mhm.
And, sometimes we get caught up with these religions not knowing the origins of them and not knowing the wickedness and the sorcery that was developed. So, that's something that we have to research too, because, we love to be, we're spiritual people, but, when we adopt that religion into our lives, that religionology, it's like, oh my God, like it's another level. And a lot of times they don't understand like what religion is doing to people. Sometimes it does crumble people because they're so under a spell that they don't feel like they have they can't even, do certain things because they have to be boxed in and not advocate for, let's say, being a black person because we're all one human race.
Quote unquote.
Mhm.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, I'm glad you said that in church. It was about maybe in like the first maybe 45 minutes to an hour of the movie when the white people were being chauffeured to church by their black people, and
Mm.
the white people, they're all going inside the church and the black people had to listen to church outside.
Mm.
You
Mhm.
remember that
I
part?
remember that part. I remember that part.
And the church and the white preacher was preaching a sermon about how slaves are to obey their master.
Right. And that's what you see now. Like,
Yeah.
even though we're not in chains, it's reformed each era, each generation of slavery. And you see people obeying, let's say, Brock and Becky, which are their friends or their partners or significant others, whatever you want to call them, and obeying white supremacy, because we have to also be reminded that just because you have blackface, you can still have white supremacy ideology. So we
That's
see a
called
lot of that going on.
that's called being a graham cracker.
Right, right, exactly. So that was a good point you made about, they was taking them into, their church. And I want to throw this in there too. Guess what would happen after church? You had a lot of lynchings that happened after church.
That's true.
Also, too, the KKK was founded on what? Christian values.
Yes, it
So
is.
that's why I'm saying do your research when it comes to joining religion, certain sects, because a lot of it was based off of pure evilness, and your ancestors was being lynched at the church after they read it from, the Old Testament, the New Testament, talking about you should love your neighbor as you love yourself, but they out here lynching your ancestors. So really, it's a fine line between that whole religion and, the origin of it.
Right. And another thing I wanted to talk about was like after it's a really really hard like terrible like rape scene.
Oh God, yeah.
Um, it's a couple of them actually. I'm talking about the first one where the white man, he was sitting up there, he was talking about I call it angry white man syndrome. He was talking about he never owned slaves, but he couldn't get a white man couldn't get a job because of the slaves. But he was working as an overseer, watching the slaves to make sure that they did their jobs right. And he went in there and he was literally just raping black women left and right.
Mm.
You remember that part?
I remember that part. That was very gruesome. Very gruesome. And that's what you see. So we're going to parallel to 2019. That's
Right.
what you see now. You may think, oh, I'm laid up with Brock. I have to say Brock because that's like the whitest name. With Brock. And you're like, oh, he's going to marry me. He treats me like a queen because these brothers don't. But he's just getting angry sex. He's like, I'm going to take out, I'm going to take them down because it's just they it's just white supremacy ideology. And so you thinking, oh, I'm doing a swirling with old boy, but he's really just angry and just taking it out on your vagina.
Exactly. And another thing I wanted to talk about, it's another scene in there where it's like a young girl. She's about 13 years old and she's I want to say caramel complected. And she's a bedwench basically at 13 years old. And she was talking about she even offered the white man a whip to beat her with before he would have sex with her because she was told that white men like to beat you before they have sex with you.
And what do
You're
we call that now? I remember seeing that, and we call
that's
that what, S&M,
yeah,
submission, domination.
yeah.
And so once
And it's
again, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's actually still a fetish today. It's called race play, and we've talked about that before. And that's just another category about white deviancy.
Right.
And so he asked the person, because she was trying to seduce one of the quote unquote documentary makers, and he was like, "Oh, you're so young," and he just sounded like he was getting turned on because of how young she was. So that just goes to white pathology of being pedophiles, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And like you should do it with somebody your own age and your own color. And she acted like she got offended. She said, "Oh, I don't like black men." Do you remember
Right.
that
I
part?
remember that part,
She was like,
and
"I don't like black men. They too strong. They too big. White men are better." Because white men, they not as strong and they not as big, so white men are better. Like, what?
right, exactly. And that's what we see going back to what we see in 2019. We hear on both sides, the sisters and the brothers. I don't like, the sisters because they got an attitude problem. They got this. Then on the flip side, you have the sisters, well, I don't like black men because they toxic and, they don't treat me like a queen. And, that whole thing is just brainwashing. It's just brainwashing, and then to the point you just hate. It's more self hatred, and then you're like, well, I didn't choose to be in a relationship with this person. No,
Yes,
you
you
was
did.
you was running after them. You was chasing after whiteness. So it's all going back to escaping blackness because of just this whole lineage you're trying to escape from. But it's gonna come back to you eventually.
Right. And I also want to keep on the another part of pedophilia that I noticed in the movie. It's another scene where these nuns and they're trying to buy this little black boy, and they're like feeling on this little boy, rubbing on him sexually. They're gushing over themselves like red in the face. And they're like, "Oh, well, the mother superior will just love him. Look how strong he is." Mind you, this boy was 8, 9 years old, okay?
Right.
Didn't even have enough testosterone to think about him if he wanted to.
Exactly.
And they were like, "Oh, well, the mother superior's already bought 3 this year." And they're like, "Well, what if we just offer 200 for him?" I'm like, "You are a nasty whore."
Mhm.
And that, like, a lot of people like to give white women passes, but no, she if the white man is the devil, what does that make her for giving birth to him? I always
Exactly.
ask that question. I always ask that question. But anyway, like, she's just gushing over herself because she wanted to take this small black child and sexually sewer him.
Right. And it is going back to the whole dominance, right? They want to not dominate us so bad that they will just get little children pedophilia and just, dominate any black man, any black boy, and just pretty much just rob him or her from their
Hmm.
innocence. And it's just disgusting. And we see that now. Go do your Googles on go type in teacher having sex with underage children.
And it's always a nasty white woman having sex with a non-white child.
Yes,
That's what it is. It is a nasty white woman and a non-white child, like 90% of the time. Sometimes it might be a white child, but for that, they're like, "Oh, well, he's just experimenting his fantasy. That's just what it is." But no, some firecrotch white woman is gonna sit around and sewer non-white children. That's her history. Okay,
yeah,
she's not meant to be a mother. Okay, look at their history. They tossed their children to the wolves. Romulus and Remus. That's how Rome was founded. So they
mhm,
say. Okay, so children are dispensable to her because all she thinks about is her own pleasure.
exactly, exactly. Whew, Lord have mercy. Yes. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I had to drink some water after that one.
Yeah, we had to do some like deep, breathing, and because this is heavy. It's a heavy movie to deconstruct. because like we said in the beginning, this is what our ancestors, if you consider yourself ADOS or foundational Black American, this is what our ancestors went through. And they're still trying to figure out how we still existing. You see what I'm saying? And they hate that we're still here and that more of us are being more, being procreated. And they trying to
Right.
figure out, we thought we, just got rid of all y'all, but not knowing like this is just like we're just such resilient people. I don't want to be into like the whole black girl magic. Like we're magical people. We're alchemists. That's the
That's
word.
true.
We're alchemists, and we
By
we
nature.
find ways by nature to survive. Whether they take resources from us, whether if we, resources are being cut off, we find ways to survive creatively. So that's okay. I want to segue into that. So going back to the embarrassment of slavery, I was having a conversation with one of my good friends this past weekend, and she was telling me that one of her clients, she's ADOS, is embarrassed of her lineage. And I just want to go on the record and say, don't ever be embarrassed by your ancestors. We were kidnapped, brutally brought over here, or, first it started in Brazil, then they went to the Caribbean islands, came here. We wasn't like, yay, we're gonna take a vacation and get whipped and get chained and you know dealing with the brutality we dealt with. So don't ever, I feel like, fix your mouth to say that, oh, it's embarrassing to come from a lineage of people who were or slaves, because I guess you were saying like we're weak. We're far from weak. Like we should even be coming out our mouths. Like we're far from weak because we're still here and we're still pushing forward. So I just had to say that piece real quick.
Right. And like what you said, like she's ashamed of her lineage. I want to say this. It's another scene in the movie. I know we feel like we're just dissecting every scene, but like we kind of are. But it was they were literally feeding these enslaved people out of
mm,
pig troughs.
yes. Oh my
Okay.
God, that part really got like I have to like take a pause from the movie, like that point, because I just couldn't. And I moved forward, but that part really got me. Go ahead.
Yeah, but they were feeding them out of pig trough. It was a mix of like beans, a couple berries, but mostly pig fat. Okay.
Mhm.
And it was like they were just like shoveling it into the trough, and then after all the troughs were filled, white man like whistled or something, and like all these slaves came rushing out, hurrying to grab up the pig meat, the pig fat with beans and berries in it. And they were talking to the white male overseer, and he was going off about, you just think they don't care, they eat anything,
Mhm.
they gobble it up, but I tell you one thing, they survive off it. But let me tell you something, if you don't clip a couple of these balls 100 years from now or 200 years from now, they're gonna be the face of the planet. And I was just like, damn, because that's what they're facing now. White people are dying,
Mhm.
praise Ogun, but white
Yeah.
people are falling off the planet.
They're falling off the planet, and not only that, they're not procreating.
Nope.
Also, too, if they are procreating, it's not with their own folks. They procreating with, non-white folks.
And let's talk about that whole procreation thing. White women are not having babies like they used to.
Mhm.
And I posted an article earlier this week about over 60,000 black women are missing.
Yes.
And a new procedure that they're really trying to push right now is womb transplants.
Yes.
So, where are these wombs coming from that these white women are going to get?
Listen, just like our article we was talking about, our episode we talked about a few episodes ago, it's pretty much coming from these missing black women and girls. Long as
Hmm.
you can menstruate, they're gonna snatch the wombs. Because I remember reading that article about that whole like womb transplant. I'm like, really? That's artificially intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we don't know anything about that, but people are like actually in the lab trying to figure out, okay, how can we, let's say, because, they did the whole cloning thing.
Yeah.
How can we like do this and be successful? And, how can we use the strongest people on the earth, black folk?
Right.
to really, procreate while, not letting Becky, die in the process. Hence why you see all this quote unquote tenet of America. Hence why you see, I'm gonna put it out there, Kim Kardashian, she probably using the black womb, being a surrogate,
Mm-hmm.
procreating more of them, Kardashians and all these other folks.
Yeah, because see, a lot of the times it's two ways that the white women have black children. They either have them shamefully, and after they've had their fun rolling around in the hay with Jamal, and they want George to be their husband, a lot of times they'll toss their black kids to foster care. We talked about that too.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is you've got the quote unquote liberal white woman who's going to have black children, and she's going to make their minds confused because
Right.
they're gonna have this black body, but they're gonna try to operate as a white person because your mother is your first teacher. Okay, so you're gonna have this black body with the mechanisms of a white woman because they see that certain things work for their mom, but they don't understand that things aren't that work for their mother is not going to work from them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just it's just a dice game that they're playing. They're rolling dice with all these people.
Right, exactly. And another thing I wanted to bring up, the scene that you mentioned too, was when they was fattening them up. Remember, they was like, "Oh, we
Yeah.
gotta fatten them up," and then the ones who didn't eat was they was taking their teeth out. Now that part I had to pause too, when they was like pretty much pulling their teeth out and just shoving the food down their throat. I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god." This, if that's not cruel, that's like vicious. We're like talking about vicious behavior. And it's just like, yo, our ancestors went through so much that because people, I hate when people say this too. I'm not my ancestor. I'll put these hands on you. Honey, no, you won't. No,
Right.
you're not. You ain't putting the paws on nobody. I haven't seen y'all put the paws on nobody. We couldn't. I know I couldn't. I would be over the. I would have to just kill myself. I'm gonna keep it honest. I don't think I can endure that vicious behavior and make it, and then here I am, being, let's say, a breeder or a sharecropper. I couldn't do it.
Exactly. Like, and that's what you were like assigned to do from birth.
Mhm.
And I want to talk about another scene in the movie where a black male, he was accused of raping a white female, so they were going to castrate him. And so what they did was they had these two black men like bringing him to a shed, and everybody was coming to see, and it was like all the black people were watching, and even the white people were there up there laughing too. And it's like that's black torture. And why did we then, as we do now, still like laugh at other black people?
Right. Exactly. Because that's what sells. Remember, we always say that. That's what sells. Black pain sells.
That's true. I mean, I just it just really blew my mind because it's like they had black people marching this black person to be hurt by this white
Mhm.
person.
Mhm. And I mean, like, that's what we see now in certain situations. Like, we see, black folks getting down with white people, and we're like, okay, yep, we're gonna like throw them to the wolves, to the white folks, and see their pain. And people get enjoyment out of that and not knowing where it stems from.
You know, we got to talk about her. We got to talk about Susan. We got to talk about this white woman. I think you know what scene I'm talking about too. The scene where it was like a group of Southern white women and they're reading from this book, and the book was basically saying how white men's true desire lies between the legs of black women.
Mhm.
And the white women, they're just like acting all appalled and everything. Like, oh my God, who could say such a thing? And then it's like the white women sitting up there lying to themselves, like, well, the longer that the niggers are around us, the lighter they get. They were like, just like the animals that uh, just like the animals that adapt to their background, and they were pointing to see this one. My husband has brought this one up from childhood, and look, he's even got some of his blonde hair. I'm like, you are not this stupid.
Girl, but that's what we see now. We see that now, and it's like when you see these biracial children, who are they with? Their white grandparents or their white mama, auntie, just the white side of the family, period.
Right, but I want to talk about that whole how white supremacists feel about mulatto individuals. Um, I feel like we have to talk about this just because it was shot in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a Haitian general that, no, not Haitian, a French general that Napoleon sent down to Haiti during the revolution, and his name was Rochambeau. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a notorious white supremacist. Okay, and he hated niggas, but he particularly hated mulatto individuals because he felt like they were double agents.
Mm.
Okay, so he thought the funniest thing in the world was he did this party. He was having a party for the wives of the soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he gets them there, and what the white supremacists do, you give us alcohol. They know how to participate to the point where they can stop to still practice white supremacy and be
Right.
dominant in any situation. We don't know how to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was, after he got all the wives, tipsy, he took them to a separate room and gave them gifts, quote unquote. I'm doing my air quotes, and the gifts were the severed heads of their husbands.
Right.
And that was funny to him. And he particularly hated mulatto women because especially if they were a third generation mulatto, because that was he felt like, again, that they were double agents.
Hmm. Dang.
And the next scene after the white women were sitting up there lying to themselves
Mm-hmm.
was white men talking about how much they love black meat, and that's what they were saying, how much it was superior to white meat because of the gamey texture to it. And all that said to me was the white consumption of blackness, and that just proved to me their cannibal nature.
Right. Just eat you up and spit you out.
Right. Like, because personally, I think that that's what they come from.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a whole like we like black consumption so we can eat you out and then spit you back out into the ghetto or whatever they like to call the hood.
Right. And another thing that
Ooh.
I noticed throughout the movie, whenever something particularly terrible was going to happen to black people, they always had black people playing music. There was a band playing to keep the quote unquote morale up.
Right.
Like
Right.
whenever something was happening to them that was particularly terrible, they would have somebody play music.
Mm. Isn't that something?
Right. Like that's
Like it's just
ugh.
so I want to bring it to 2019, like entertainment. They feel like okay, these niggers they love some entertainment, so whatever happens to them is just entertainment to them, and we're gonna keep y'all entertained too by playing some music, playing some rap, or having these reality TV shows to distract you from you really being on the menu.
Exactly. And I want to talk about how we were trained to accept white torture. Is it's a scene in the movie where they have these black men, and these are like big strong black men, and they're standing up there being told how to interact with white men. And the white man's like, whenever a white man's talking, you just look at the toe of his boot. And one of the black men looked up at him, and he slapped him. And immediately after he slapped him, the black man said, "Thank you, master."
Mm.
And that part just, I had to pause it for a second and walk away because that just upset me.
Yeah, because okay. Let's talk about modern day, the boys in blue.
Mhm.
It's just the same thing with the boys in blue. Like, you gotta accept the ideology. So what if you pull the trigger on, a fellow black man, fellow black woman, like, but you still in fear of us, man.
Exactly. And so like that was just like after he slaps you, you have to say thank you to him.
Right.
Like okay. But if a black man slaps you, you ready to shoot him up or cut his head off.
Of course. Of course.
And then another thing that was interesting in the movie was the coons.
Oh Lord, I can go.
They had this one coon. He's sitting up there in a top hat and some broken glasses, and I'm sure one of his master's sons' old like suit vest. You know which one I'm talking about.
Yes.
And,
Uh-huh.
and he's sitting up here. He talks real good. Now that's what you call a zip coon dandy. Okay, a zip coon dandy was a black person who imitated white people, and white people thought it was funny. They would try to dress like them, talk like them, walk like them, act like them, and those were zip coon dandies. Okay, because they were over exaggerated white people in
Mhm.
black bodies. And so he didn't even call himself a slave. He said he was a worker, and he had a dental plan, and if war came he wouldn't even have to go because he was such a good worker and his master wouldn't let him go. And I'm like, you can't be serious.
Right, exactly. But it's the same thing that you see now. You see the whole like boule, the gatekeepers. You also see the whole code switching. That's what code switching really is. It's just changing your dialect, changing even the way that you use your voice.
Yeah.
What they say. I seen a meme say like, yeah, you would act like my voice has a Harvard degree, because the way that they code switch and have this quote unquote white, dialect.
Yeah.
So you can speak proper English, so you can get the sale, or get your point across. But we all still know that she black. So you see that heavily, especially now. Like, people do a lot of code switching, so they won't sound like they're from, a certain area in that town or from that state.
Exactly. And I want to next go into how I want to put this. I want to go into the medical apartheid part of the movie.
Hmm.
Like they were saying that slaves who would try to run away were mentally ill, and they named the condition drapetomania.
Which was in the first DSM.
Right. Now let's talk about the slaves that were running away. The slaves that were in the field, yeah, they were running away too, but they weren't running away as fast as the house slaves. Okay, because the house slaves, they saw how degenerate these white supremacists were. And they were like, "Man, let me get up out of here." And you can go and you can read these runaway slave flyers and posters, it'll tell you like they give you really vivid descriptions. A mulatto house wench with a straight nose for a Negro.
Right.
They'll say stuff like that in it, and so they said that black people weren't human, so a human's main goal was to be free, and so since a black person wasn't a human and they were running away towards freedom, they had to have some type of mental illness. Okay.
And I want to say that they took that diagnoses out of the DSM when I think like DSM 2 or 3. So the DSM, let me break it down for you guys, for those that don't know. It's an actual book through the American Psychological Society. Pretty much, it's a diagnosis of all your clinical diagnoses, social anxiety, whatever the case is. So it's 5 different axes. And so pretty much when it comes to like mental health illnesses, they refer to this book. It's like the Bible of for psychologists, social sciences. So that was actually a diagnosis in the book, that you have a clinical mental health because you was running away. And they just took it out in, like, let's say the early 1900s.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That was very interesting. And I remember I had to take this class when I was getting my master's. I'm like, what? Like, this was actually a clinical diagnosis to say, hey, you're running away from slavery. There's something wrong with you because you got it good here. That's what I'm saying. And who wrote the book? White folks. You got it good on that plantation. How dare you run away? You have a mental disorder.
Right, and let's talk about their white insecurity of their sex organs. This white man in the movie, he was supposed to be this doctor, and he was just
Mm-hmm.
crazy as cat shit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about how black people with their sex organs are so enlarged. He had one dude just like in this like weird contraption
Right.
and doing like making his arms flop like a chicken so he could sweat, and he was like catching the sweat to smell it, and I'm like, huh?
Who does that?
Somebody sick. And
Right.
then he said that black people had elephantitis of the genitals, and that's why black people's genitals are so much larger.
Mm.
Did you catch that?
Yes, I did.
Like he literally said that black people have elephantitis of the genitals.
Lord. And I mean, people sit around and really have this mindset even now.
That's true.
And you're like, what? And you have to look at them like, are you serious? Mm.
Oof.
I know, right? We have to be like,
Just
ugh.
oof. All right. Let's move on. Now, the last part of the movie, the last couple parts, we got a couple more parts to talk about. I know we're probably running a little long tonight, guys, but this stuff that just has to be talked about. Let's talk about the breeding farm scene. And for those who don't know, breeding farms were a way to get more slaves after
Mm-hmm.
they stopped the white people from bringing us from Africa to America. And honestly, the most successful breeding farm was, excuse, excuse me, was not in the South. It was in a border state of Maryland, okay? And because after slavery ended, they just, set black people like, go and get the fuck up out of here.
Right.
That's why Baltimore is the leading
Oh
city
my
of
God.
accidental incest in the black community.
You took my notes. You must have read my notes. Yes.
But like seriously, it's because of that breeding farm.
Can you imagine? So let's talk about this. You already broken. You just know a little bit about your lineage. You live in Baltimore, Maryland, and we could have a whole episode about Baltimore within itself and just the whole, black folks dysfunction there. And you're just it's an accidental incest because you don't know who your folks are, and here you go, you procreate with some guy or some chick, and that's your cousin. Like, let's say your second or third cousin, because for me, I still claim them folks.
Yeah,
First to third cousins, like, or even fourth cousins, we still got two. That's too close in blood.
yeah.
Can y'all imagine that? Like,
It's just
oh,
they kept these men, okay? They kept them in stalls. And the only way that they would feed them is if they were getting women pregnant, okay? So they kept you in a horse stall. What do we always say that the white woman refers to you as? A buck.
a
A,
buck
a hooved animal.
animal. Mm-hmm.
That's what we call them here, okay? Well, that's what we say that they call us here. You're not even a person. So they would, soon as a black girl got maybe her third or fourth period, because let's talk about this for a second. When you get your first period, you might not have one for another 6 months.
Right.
Okay, so once your period becomes regular, that's when they would take these black girls up to these breeding farms to get impregnated. And they would talk. There was talk about who had the best seed, who could make the strongest boy or the strongest girl. So there were people that they would bring their young black girls from as young as like 12 to 16 up to these
Mm-hmm.
breeding farms to get impregnated by so and so because they heard how potent that he was.
Right.
And
And what do we see now? We see a lot of children being breeded now because the cycle haven't been broken. And I was telling someone yesterday, and they have the cluster pearls. I said, why do you think that families back, let's say our grandparents' generation, our great grandparents' generation, had 10 plus kids? Because they have to have children to work. They have to have children to be sharecroppers. My parents were sharecroppers. I'm gonna be honest with you guys.
Yeah.
So and my parents are still alive. My dad's 71. My mom's gonna be 70 this year. They were sharecroppers, and like my dad it was 10 of them, and my mom it was 7 of them. So and they would be taken out of school, and that's why the South, and I mentioned this on Twitter today, have certain why the South go to school from August to May, because between that time, after that time, you gotta be in the field picking cotton, soybeans, different crops. So that's why people are like, oh my God, my big mama had all these kids. Yeah, because it was a purpose as
Yeah.
well. And also too, the cycle wasn't broken. Now when I see people with like that many kids in 2019, I'm like, hold on, sis, how are you capable of taking care of all those children? And I had this conversation with folks last night. So that's what we see now. We see breeding farms, and not the exact terms, but we see, that still continuing on.
Now, I want to talk about another scene because this really stuck out to me. It was this big fat white man in this like fancy suit, and he's sitting up here. And one of the because there were women who lived on the plantation, because how you think they got the children to sell?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a woman giving birth on the plantation, and he says, "Well, come on, let's show you how a little bastard gets brought into the world."
Right.
And so he's sitting up there. He catches the baby as soon as the baby comes out, and he looks over to the cameraman. He was like, "Look at this bastard! Look how strong it is! I've never seen a baby born like this strong. I'm gonna name this one for you. I'm gonna call it Macaroni." That direct quote.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked the mother. He asked her. He said, "Well, who's the father?" And she's sitting there sweating. She still trying to push out afterbirth, talking about, "Oh, well, you had me lay with Samson and it didn't take, so you had me lay with Bruno too to be sure, so I don't rightly know." And he says, "Oh, well, that's all right. The baby's beautiful all the same." And then he said, "What did your master tell you?" And he gave $1 to her. He put $1 in her hand for having a baby, looked at the camera, winked, and said, "It's a family tradition."
Right. So let's go back to now. We see that now. Okay, let's take it a step further. Maury. People love watching Maury. No lie, I have watched Maury because you're like, Lloyd, these folks going here don't know who the baby father is. Maury sitting up there
Smiling.
and smiling. Oh, Shaniqua, you don't know who the baby father is? Well, we got Tayshawn and we got Dayshawn. Come on out. And it's just what Nate has said is look at Maury, look at what she just said. If that's not the same thing, you still have that in 2019. I don't know who the baby father is. Shame, guilt, embarrassment, right? Because is once again, this is not anything new. This has been going on for eons.
Exactly. Like, and let's take it even further. The government, the new slave master, is still putting $1 or $2 in your hand for having children with no
Thank
man in the
you.
house.
Thank you.
Okay.
Government assistance, Section 8, food stamps. And I had this conversation again last night with some brothers, and they was talking about, well, the baby mom's going to be straight. I said, no, just because you getting a check. But you got to think about if you got, let's say, even 5 kids, how are you holistically supporting them? We're talking about 5 different personalities. You may have 2, 3 different baby daddies, then you got 2 kids. Like, where's my father at? It's hard for you to keep a job, to be educated, or just even have time for yourself because you have to like pretty much take care of their needs. You're always upset. You have a lack of support system, but zaddy government, it's like, it's okay, we're gonna put you in these projects that
Mhm.
should have been torn down since inception of the projects. We're gonna put you in these nasty projects so you can have 1 or 2 baby daddies or some random dude drop by to say, oh, you look good or whatever the case is, and drop another, seed off, in your belly. So the vicious cycle continues, and we fall for it because we like, I don't need no man because I'm being taken care of by my baby's father, the government. Then the black man, let's be honest, if he has too many kids, how is he paying child support? He can't. He's not going to have a livelihood.
That's very true. So, like this is like they rebrand themselves like the alt-right,
Yes. Yes.
Like
It is.
this is all it is. I,
It is.
it's
Like
like
slavery is
ugh.
rebranded every generation. I don't care what y'all say, like slavery is rebranded every generation. And it's like something like I said, I think a few episodes ago, we're in a mass incarceration slavery.
Yes.
And you can see like, yeah, they're in chains too, and they behind bars. So what's the difference from when our ancestors first got here to now? It's not much of a stark difference because ones who are mass incarcerated, and let's say they're incarcerated for marijuana, which is now $1 billion industry, so they are being pretty much put to slavery. Go drive on your highway. Who you see is cleaning up the highways? That's pretty much slavery.
And especially down in Louisiana, you see people cleaning up the highway. You see some white man on a horse with a shotgun watching them.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
thing. That's a thing that you see driving anywhere on a highway in Louisiana.
And I mean, in Alabama, all these places, you don't see them on a horse, but you see them, you're like, oh, there goes the inmates from, let's say, this place, wherever the case is, cleaning up the highway. But, people don't want to understand and realize that slavery was never over. It just got rebranded.
Right. And this brings us to the end of the movie. There was a black man in modern times for the 70s, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he was reading this book, The Confessions of Nat Turner, and I really want to talk about this book for a second because I've read it. I've read them. There's two books called The Confessions of Nat Turner. One is The True Confession. It was by this lawyer. He's a white man named Thomas Gray, and he went and talked to Nat Turner in jail when they had caught him, and he just talked to him and interviewed him. And the book is it's really a pamphlet. It's about 10 to 15 pages, and that's The Confessions of Nat Turner. And then during the first wave of Afrocentrism in the 70s, there was this white man named William Styron, okay? He was a homosexual white man who was in a sexual arrangement with James Baldwin.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote the book with James Baldwin's blessing, named it The Confessions of Nat Turner, okay? And he made Nat Turner it was a homoerotic love story, basically. If he wasn't lusting after other black males, he was lusting after white women, okay? And it's a disgusting read. And what gets me is that James Baldwin okayed this. But
Of course.
anyway, but anyway, so this black man is reading The Confessions of Nat Turner, and he's just on a beach, and he's watching people while reading this book, and he's having these visions of killing these white people, and he's killing these white people in his mind. And one scene is like, because he's reading the book, and you hear some of the pages from the book being read, and it's like, we forgot the baby. So, the scene in his mind where he's fighting them, after he kills the white man and the white woman, he goes and gets the baby, and he throws the baby up against the wall, and it's just this big splatter of blood. And then it's these goofy white people on the beach. You got this, like, really goofy ass white man. He's sitting up here, like, dressing up like a monkey and, like, ooking around, and he's got these two white women with him, and he fantasizes about killing them.
Mm.
But the white man bothers him from his reading. He comes up to him, and that's just what white people do today. They just walk up to you, hey man, be a good sport. Can you come do this for me? He wanted the black man to take his picture, and so the black man reluctantly does it in his mind after trying to ignore him. When he realized that the white man wasn't going to go anywhere, he was like, fine, all right. And then he just took his picture and he, fantasized killing him. And then after that, he sits back down and he goes back to reading his book, and a ball comes over. Okay, and it was like this little white boy. And he picks up the ball and he sets his book down and he looks at him. And he's like, come here, come here. The black man's telling the little white boy to come here. And so the little white boy is like, okay. So he's walking up to him. And as he's walking up to him, the black man, like, busts his ball. Like, he just burst it, and he smiles at him, and he just kind of like, yeah, I just fucked your day up. And then, like, to me, that was him crushing a white man.
Right.
Or crushing his world, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
What did you take from the end?
The end is just, you know what? It just shows, like, how far have we been? Look, is it, I look at it from that point of view, like, have we really made progress? Because, you know, the 70s, we're talking about what, we talking about post civil rights movement, after the assassination of, you know, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you know, like 68, like that was a tough time, like late 60s. And we're transitioning to that time in which, you know, people are dealing with trauma. Black folks are dealing with trauma, hence cueing, you know, like drugs. But folks are really trying to be, you know, on their Afrocentric stuff, but you still have what affirmative action is coming into play, right? Affirmative action is coming into play. We're talking about Northern Migration Part 2. And so I was looking at all that whole aspect and like, okay, how folks really came along. And then at the end of the day, movements were still being killed. You know, movements like these grassroots movements like Black Panther Party, you know, really doing amazing stuff. Those movements are like, okay, here we go, COINTELPRO, we about to kill this again. So, and I look at it from, I've not just looked at it from the end of the movie, but also I compared it to now. You know, we really think that, oh, we came a long ways, but it's just rebranded once again.
Right. You remember back in the day before, you know, autosave on video games, if you messed up, you had to start all the way back at the beginning?
Right.
That's Black people right now.
Yes. That's us right now. And someone had made this dope, it wasn't a meme, but they did like a Facebook status in one of my groups. And it was saying how they let me look it up real quick. They said when Harvard University, we talking about Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts, was you know, the beginning, Black folks were still slaves. Okay, Harvard was established in 1636.
Yeah.
So you have to really, you know, like think. It's not, you don't have to, you know, be a rocket scientist. 1636, yeah. Our ancestors were enslaved, y'all. And folks was up in here going to college. White folks.
Georgetown owned slaves too. Most of those Ivies owned slaves. They were quote unquote dorm maidens or dorm, you know, servants.
Exactly.
And that's where your modern dorm parent comes from.
Right. And at the time, as Nate has said, let's go back to Georgetown real quick about slaves, the parallel with that. So now, you know, they're asking Georgetown students to, I think they're going to come out their pocket a few extra dollars for reparations. The university. Of course they're going to do that. The university should be paying reparations. And also allowing ADOS and Foundational Black Americans to go for free. But that's another episode we can do. So we always trying to always keep up, right? Oh my God, we got to keep up. We got to build our own systems. We got to build our own organizations and schools. Yo, how are we going to do that when these folks have been going to college 1636? And when we do build our own systems, right? When we do build our own ecosystems, they get so jealous. They burn them down. They bomb them. They put a whole infrastructure of highways. I'm talking about Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina, because it's a Black Wall Street there too.
Yep.
So every time when we do build our own ecosystems, white supremacy, here they come. Not saying you can't, you know what I'm saying? Not saying we can't do it, but when you have to go against 1636 and we talking about 2019 in which some of our people are not even, they're illiterate. They don't have access to clean water. They don't have access to, sewage. We're talking about Lowndes County, Alabama.
Mhm.
Okay? So, like we have a lot of work to do. We always say that, but I like to say this podcast is like the grassroots of like having people mind turn like, yo, wow, I know all this knowledge now. I gotta do something. And if we all do a piece, even within our community, we could do something. But like sitting back and trying to get the bag, like white folks are doing, because they're getting the bag on this all day, every day, just by appropriating the culture. So we have to really, we have to have that self-reflection moment. That's what I wanted to get to. So the ending part, that's all I have to say about the ending part.
Man, this was a really heavy show.
It was a heavy show. I mean, I feel like a lot of our shows are heavy, but this one is heavy, and I guess we're wrapping it up. So we want to let folks know, like, if you do decide to watch it. Be very open, and if you gotta take pauses like we did, it's okay. Like, take a pause, like really take some breaths. If you need to journal, what's going on, ask questions, whatever, like do that. But it's a very heavy it's a very heavy film, and I was like, oh my god, like I was like, remember I had to lay down for like a few because it was just that heavy. But it's reality. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just, okay, where do we go from here?
Right. Just like Dre just said, just like, because it's not like we've gone any place further. The only thing that has changed is our clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Our hairstyles. That's the only thing that has changed. White people have, pulled the wool over our eyes. They say all the time the best trick that the devil ever pulled was convincing people that he didn't exist. Well, the best trick white people ever pulled was convincing us that racism was over.
Right. And I don't care. I understand y'all president was black. Actually, he was Kenyan and white. So he had a whole white ideology. You could say my president is black. But black folks are even in a worse predicament. See what I'm saying? Like, we're in a worse predicament, after having a quote unquote black person in the White House.
Oh yeah, we were harmed more frequently with Obama in the White House because they couldn't necessarily, run up at him, so they were getting us.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, any final words of wisdom you want to share?
Let's see. I don't know, man. This show took a lot out of me. I'm not even gonna try to. I can't even pull one from anywhere.
So the show took a lot out of us.
What about you? You got any?
You know what? Like I said, just watch the film with an open mind and an open heart. Take some breaths, like I said, because it's very tough. Like I said, I'm very, my demeanor sometimes I can be very like, not rock the boat. I'm very cool, calm, collected, but this film really took a lot out of me. I had to take a lot of pauses. But watch it, and also too, just protect your neck and protect your magic.
Yeah.
And remember that we come from people who are alchemists. Also, too, I want to say this one last thing. Make sure, if you have any of your elders in your family who's alive, like, do an interview with them and see how tough their life is and what they had to sacrifice for you to be in a predicament that you're in now, or a situation that you're in now. Because I think a lot of times we, take that for granted. So, I would say interview an elder in your family to really see like the deal. It's cool to like read, like I read Barracoon. Everyone should read Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston, and to really get a picture on how the last slave ship that they're finding in Mobile, Alabama, and we probably do an episode on that.
That's where my
Um,
family from.
Right, that's where Nate's family's from. My family's from like 45 minutes from Mobile. So South Alabama, we could do an episode on South Alabama alone, has a lot of interesting history when it comes to like even mixing of black and indigenous Indians such as Creek Indians and Cherokee Indians. So, like even, just do your Googles when it comes to that and read how they was illegally brought to Mobile and created a town called African Town, which I'm going to take a tour of over the summertime. So,
Right.
that's what I want to say.
Oh, and also,
Go ahead.
I was just say also, they did a whole segment on the Native American in the movie.
Yes. And we should talk about that next episode. We have to talk about that next episode because I'm sick of folks coming to me talking about they Creek and Cherokee because they $5 Indians. So we should talk about that next episode because folks don't know. Like I can actually prove my ish, and these some pure white folk talking about I'm Creek and Cherokee, and they
I can
looking at
prove
you.
mine.
Right.
I mean, I can prove mine. I got the records.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I got the photos.
Okay. So we should do an episode on that. So if you guys, open to it, we'll do an episode on that because we gonna dismantle that real quickly.
Yeah, we
But
gonna get on them. We gonna get on them pretendians.
yes, the $5 Indians. So, but as always, thank you all for like listening. We know this is a heavy topic. It's very, it's a long episode. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for rocking with us. Oh my God, like we're just doing like dope work. We're so excited. We're just happy that we have folks listening to us. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at The Urban Social Scientists. Don't forget to listen to us on Google Play, Apple, Spotify,
And
SoundCloud.
also, I want to give a big shout out to our network, Tone Deaf Radio Network, TDR Radio. Make sure you guys are listening to the whole lineup on that show, on that network, because every show is fire.
Yes, so shout out to our people over there. They like some dope individuals. Like major shout out to them. Show them some love. Make sure you listen to all their podcasts. So that is it from the us folk over here. We hope you all have a really amazing, rest of the week. And we are Audi 5000.
Later days.
Peace.